of nobody winning. You know, the four teams, the Phillies, the Flyers, the Sixers, and Eagles played over 9,000 games without anybody winning. And so when it finally happened, 9,000, Lynn.
That is absolutely. When I read that in the book, I was like flabbergasted. I'm like, are you kidding?
And I counted them up myself, so I know it's true. And when something like that happens, you know, this is one of the things, one of the points I really tried to make in this book. It is not a sports experience anymore. It becomes a life-changing event for millions of people. You know, you don't just feel differently about the Phillies. You feel differently about the world. It's a great world when you win.
Everybody was in a good mood. It really was always sunny in Philadelphia there for a while. You know, we saw those little kids talking to our camera crew at the stadium, and it almost seems unfair that already in their lifetime they experienced a world championship when there were so many people out there who waited for years, decades, in fact, before they got to experience it.
Yeah, I mean, it's so true. They have no idea what it's like to live here, right? There's a story in this book that people have commented to me a lot. And it goes back to when the Eagles were in the Super Bowl in 2005, and I sat around with my kids to watch the Eagles play in the Super Bowl. And, of course, that didn't go so well. and after that game was over, my daughter Hallie looked at me and she said, "Dad, can we move? This stinks living here. Nobody ever wins anything." And so many people have told me they could relate to that sentiment, that after a while, you just wanted to go find some other town. That was a much easier alternative.
And yet you point out that Philadelphia fans just don't do that. I mean, other people in other cities, they can adapt or adopt another team. But in Philly, they do stick with them. They may boo the heck out of them, but they do stick with their teams, don't they?
Exactly right. Now, another one of the chapters in this book has to do with when Jimmy Rollins went on a TV show, I'm sure people remember it well, in August, and called the Philadelphia fans front runners. And the good people of Philadelphia didn't agree for some reason.
Maybe because the word Philadelphia and front runner had never really been used in the same sentence.
It's hard to do that. They never won anything. How could they be front runners, right?
Exactly. Now, if you're talking Dallas, you're talking New York, it's a different ballgame. You're talking, Pittsburgh. But you just didn't understand why Jimmy made that comment and said that Philadelphia fans were front runners.
Well, I kind of understood what he was getting at, but it was not exactly the right terminology. Now, has this been the most supportive, nurturing fan base in America? No, it has not. But to say front runners really misread the people of this town.
So it misread the people, but what was the ultimate outcome as a result of him making that statement?
Well, I mean, Jimmy went through a rough time as a guy who had been so popular in Philadelphia. I mean, he had a few weeks of getting booed, and at the same time he made these comments, he forgot to get a hit for like 2 weeks. He went 5 for 50, and that just made it worse. But eventually, he's all about winning, and he came out of it, and they embraced him along with that team. And now it's like it never happened.
Hey, baptism by Philadelphia, right?
Once you win, you're golden in this town, though.
That's true.
That's the good news.
And it wasn't just with the fans. He actually caught some trouble from Charlie Manuel as well. Not once, but twice.
Yeah, he got benched 2 different times during this season. Once for not running out of pop-up, and the other time for being late to a game. And, this was a whole chapter unto itself, because Charlie Manuel, a manager that people in Philadelphia were sure was just too soft, too easy on his guys, took that hard stand and didn't just do it with anybody, did it with the reigning MVP. And it really, I think, it had an impact not just on Jimmy Rollins and on that clubhouse, but it had a huge impact on what people in Philadelphia thought of Charlie Manuel.
We're going to talk about what else had a big impact on the 2008 Phillies in just a moment. We do have to take a quick break, but we're going to continue our conversation with Jayson Stark about that Phillies team and the World Championship season right after this. I hope you'll stay with us.
Lynn Doyle's jewelry provided by David Craig Diamonds and Fine Jewelry, Newtown, Pennsylvania.
Transportation for It's Your Call guests provided by Preferred Car and Limousine.
Oh, there's no doubt about they can repeat this year and for the next couple of years with the team that they have.
Absolutely, 110%. Best offense they ever had in the history of Philadelphia Phillies.
As long as they pick up the bullpen a little bit, there's no doubt in my mind.
Definitely the NLCS.
I definitely think they're going to repeat.
Phillies can repeat this year.
No. They don't have the pitching yet.
Of course they can. I mean, what kind of question is that?
That's what people around the region had to say when we asked if they thought the Phillies would repeat the World Championship in 2009. The reason we're talking about this is because my guest this hour is Jayson Stark. He's written a new book about last year's chase for the crown. It's called Worth the Wait, Tales of the 2008 Phillies. It is a fun read, and we were saying during the break, Jayson, that it's nice to read something and talk about something that's upbeat.
Yeah.
In this particular time in the world, it's just so nice to say the Phillies are the world champions.
Right. Well, that was one of the things about October, I think, in Philadelphia is, nobody wanted to think about their stock portfolio. And it really brought people together. Like, there's nothing in life like sports. There's nothing. I defy you, Lynn. You've done a lot of interviews with a lot of people. I want you to think of anything else that could take 2 million people, get them to abandon everything in their actual lives, and get them to show up at the same place on the same day, same time, and all feel exactly the same emotion. There's nothing else in life that does that has that effect on that many people, right?
Right. And you know what? It's interesting because we all know how it turned out. So there's no suspense in this book, okay?
Yeah.
But I will tease the viewers and say that at the very end, when some of the players are talking about the emotion that they felt when they had won and what they felt when they looked around and saw thousands upon thousands of people enjoying that moment, it's a very compelling moment in the book.
Well, it is. It was a very compelling moment in the lives of everybody who was there. They'd always heard, if you ever win, you won't believe what this town will be like. But they still couldn't comprehend it till they rode those parade floats and saw the tears in the eyes of all those people and felt the emotion of the town. I mean, they just play baseball for a living. Greg Dobbs, I think, said that in the book. I'm just a baseball player. I never comprehended that I could have this kind of impact on people, on a whole city. And that's what that team did.
And we did this parade without a whole lot of trouble accompanying it, like we've seen in some of the other cities. Well, I mentioned earlier in the show that we invited our Facebook friends and our friends on MySpace to tell us what they thought about the season. And I want to share some of the responses that I got. Are you game?
Sounds great.
Okay, here's a sample of what some of our Facebook friends had to say. Jennifer tells us that she seems to think that all of the players on the 2008 Phillies seem like a bunch of buddies on and off the field. They show a lot of camaraderie, which makes them endearing to the fans. Agree with that?
I do agree with it. It's a very, very close bunch of players, very close team. And I do think that has an effect when you're on the field. Teams tend to pull together.
And fans can see that. Bob says, I think there was an excitement left over from the 2007 push into the playoffs. When the 2008 season started, the entire team and a majority of the fans already believed that, and it carried all the way through the season. You mentioned that in the book. We talked about it earlier in the show.
No doubt about it. I mean, they played with a tremendous sense of self-assurance and purpose because of that.
All right. Now, Jim writes, Lynn,